76. Liu Xiu rebuilds the Han Dynasty. The aftermath of the Battle of Cunyang. Following the decisive Battle of Cunyang, Luoyang and Liu Xiu's reputation soared. Some advisors to Emperor Gengshi, Liu Xian, began to view Luoyang as a potential threat and persuaded the emperor to eliminate him. Using the pretext of insubordination, Emperor Gengshi ordered Luoyang's execution. Upon hearing of his elder brother's death, Liu Xiu realized that he was not strong enough to confront Emperor Gengshi directly. Instead, he hurried to Wancheng, modern-day Nanyang, Henan, to express his loyalty. When others asked about his role in the victory at Cunyang, Liu Xiu modestly attributed all credit to his soldiers, avoiding any display of arrogance. He also refrained from mourning his brother in public, continuing to eat, drink, and converse as usual, concealing his grief completely. Emperor Gengshi, believing that Liu Xiu bore no grudge, felt a tinge of guilt and appointed him as Grand General of Pacification. However, he remained wary of Liu Xiu and hesitated to entrust him with significant power. Liu Xiu gains a foothold in Hebei. After the fall of Chang'an and the execution of Wang Mang, Emperor Gengshi moved to Luoyang and later relocated to Chang'an. It was at this time that he gave Liu Xiu a small force and sent him to pacify Hebei. At the time, the empire was in chaos. Various warlords, landlords, and self-proclaimed kings had risen across the country. Some even declared themselves emperors, each controlling different regions. Emperor Gengshi's decision to send Liu Xiu to Hebei, intended as an exile, ironically provided Liu Xiu with the perfect opportunity to expand his influence. Upon arriving in Hebei, Liu Xiu abolished many of Wang Mang's harsh policies, released prisoners, and simultaneously suppressed separatist forces and peasant uprisings. Through a combination of diplomacy and military action, he gradually brought all of Hebei under his control. By 25 CE, Liu Xiu and his advisors deemed the time right. In Hao, modern-day Baixiang County, Hebei, Liu Xiu formally declared himself emperor, establishing the Eastern Han Dynasty. He became known as Emperor Guangwu of Han. The collapse of Emperor Gengshi's rule. Emperor Gengshi, having settled in Chang'an, believed his reign was secure. However, he soon fell into corruption, recklessly granting titles and privileges, neglecting governance, and indulging in wine and pleasure. His soldiers, unchecked, engaged in looting, fueling widespread discontent among former Green Forest Army leaders. Meanwhile, Fan Chong, the leader of the Red Eyebrow Army, saw Emperor Gengshi's weakness and decided to overthrow him. He led a force of 200,000 troops in an assault on Chang'an. Emperor Gengshi's forces tried to resist but suffered a series of defeats. Panic spread within his ranks, and his leadership crumbled. Some generals advised Emperor Gengshi to evacuate Chang'an, but he suspected them of betrayal and had them executed. Others defected to the Red Eyebrow Army, further weakening his position. As Fan Chong's forces breached Hangu Pass, Emperor Gengshi's fate was sealed. The Red Eyebrow Army and the Puppet Emperor. Although the Red Eyebrow Army sought to overthrow Emperor Gengshi, they still adhered to the idea of restoring a Liu as emperor due to traditional loyalty to the Han royal family. Among over 70 people surnamed Liu in their ranks, they selected a 15-year-old cowherd named Liu Penzi, who was supposedly a distant relative of the Western Han imperial family, and proclaimed him emperor. When the Red Eyebrow Army captured Chang'an, Emperor Gengshi fled. Fan Chong sent envoys demanding his surrender within 20 days. With no other choice, Emperor Gengshi handed over the imperial seal and surrendered. Although the Red Eyebrow Army controlled Chang'an, they soon faced a crisis. Feeding their massive army proved impossible. Wealthy merchants and landlords hoarded grain, leading to widespread starvation. Chaos engulfed the city, and order collapsed completely. Seeing no alternative, Fan Chong abandoned Chang'an and led his army westward. However, food shortages persisted, and when they reached Qianshui, modern-day Gansu, they encountered resistance from local landlords. With no secure base, the Red Eyebrow Army was forced to turn back east. The fall of the Red Eyebrow Army. During this time, Emperor Guangwu, Liu Xiu, had seized control of Luoyang. Learning that the Red Eyebrow Army was retreating eastward, he deployed 200,000 soldiers in a two-pronged ambush. He sent General Feng Yi to lure the Red Eyebrow Army eastward. Feng Yi challenged them to a formal battle, setting an agreed-upon time and location. The naive Fan Chong took the bait and dispatched 10,000 troops to attack. Feng Yi initially engaged with only a small force, baiting the Red Eyebrow army into a full-scale charge. Then, hidden Han troops, disguised as Red Eyebrow soldiers, emerged and launched a surprise attack. Caught in the confusion, Red Eyebrow soldiers could not distinguish friend from foe. Taking advantage of the chaos, Han troops started shouting surrender. Surrender. Seeing so many Red Eyebrow soldiers calling for surrender, panic spread, and the entire Red Eyebrow force collapsed. By January 27 CE, Fan Chong led his remaining forces toward Yiyang, modern-day Yiyang County, Henan. Feng Yi immediately reported this to Emperor Guangwu, who personally led his pre-deployed troops to intercept them. Surrounded with no escape, Fan Chong had no choice but to send envoys to negotiate peace. The end of the Red Eyebrow army. Emperor Guangwu spared Liu Penzi, bringing him to Luoyang and granting him land and a house. However, just a few months later, he accused Fan Chong of treason and had him executed. Thus, the Red Eyebrow army was completely wiped out, marking the end of one of the largest peasant uprisings in Chinese history. Emperor Guangwu successfully restored the Han Dynasty, founding the Eastern Han Dynasty, which would last for nearly 2 centuries. 77. The stubborn Magistrate of Luoyang. After Emperor Guangwu of Han defeated the Green Forest and Red Eyebrow rebellions, he went on to eliminate the separatist regimes in Longyu, modern-day Gansu, and Shu, modern-day Sichuan, successfully reuniting China. He then established Luoyang as the capital. To distinguish his rule from the earlier Han dynasty founded by Liu Bang, historians refer to his reign as the Eastern Han or later Han. Emperor Guangwu's policies and challenges. Having witnessed the devastation caused by warlords fighting for territory, Emperor Guangwu understood the people's exhaustion. He was determined to implement a policy of recuperation and economic recovery. His reforms included reducing taxes, freeing slaves, reducing forced labor, granting multiple general amnesties. As a result, the economy gradually recovered, and the people began to rebuild their lives. However, while military strength was necessary to seize power, governing required laws. Emperor Guangwu recognized this but also knew that laws were difficult to enforce against the imperial family and aristocrats. A prime example was his elder sister, Princess Huiyang, who abused her royal status. Not only did she act lawlessly, but even her servants disregarded imperial decrees. Dong Xian, the unyielding magistrate. The magistrate of Luoyang, Dong Xian, was a fearless and unyielding official who believed that imperial relatives should not be above the law. One day, a slave belonging to Princess Huiyang committed murder but hid inside the princess's residence to avoid punishment. Since Dong Xian could not enter the palace without imperial permission, he stationed guards at the entrance day and night, waiting for the murderer to emerge. Eventually, Princess Huiyang left her residence in a carriage, accompanied by the very murderer. Dong Xian received the news and personally led officers to block her carriage. Princess Huiyang, enraged by what she saw as an insult to her authority, scolded him. "How dare you, a mere magistrate, obstruct my carriage?" But Dong Xian was unfazed. He drew his sword, slashed a line on the ground, and sternly rebuked her. "Your Highness has allowed a criminal to commit murder without consequence. This is a violation of imperial law." Without hesitation, he ordered his men to seize the murderer and execute him on the spot. Princess Huiyang was so furious she nearly fainted. She rushed to the imperial palace and wept before Emperor Guangwu, complaining about how Dong Xian had humiliated her. Hearing this, Emperor Guangwu was infuriated and immediately summoned Dong Xian. He ordered his attendants to beat Dong Xian in front of the princess to appease her anger. Before they could carry out the punishment, Dong Xian fearlessly spoke up. "Before you punish me, Your Majesty, allow me to say my final words. Then, I am willing to die." Still furious, Emperor Guangwu snapped. "What else is there to say?" Dong Xian stood firm and declared, "Your Majesty, you are the ruler who has restored the Han dynasty. You must uphold the law. If you allow the princess to shield a murderer, how can you govern the empire? There is no need to punish me, I will end my life myself." With that, he raised his head and ran straight into a pillar. Blood gushed down his face, and Emperor Guangwu, though still angry, realized that Dong Xian was right. However, to save face for Princess Huiyang, he ordered Dong Xian to bow and apologize. Dong Xian refused. He declared, "I would rather die than bow unjustly." The palace attendants tried to force his head down, but he planted both hands firmly on the ground, resisting with all his strength. Seeing this, one of the eunuchs shouted loudly, "Your Majesty, his neck is too stiff, it won't bend." At this, Emperor Guangwu laughed, knowing he had been bested. He ordered, "This stubborn man, just send him away." Princess Huyang, still angry, turned to the emperor and said, "When you were a commoner, you protected fugitives and criminals, and no officials dared to search our house. Now that you're emperor, how can a mere magistrate defy me?" Emperor Guangwu replied, "Precisely because I am emperor now, I cannot act as I did when I was a commoner." Not only did Emperor Guangwu pardon Dong Xian, but he rewarded him with 300,000 coins in recognition of his unwavering commitment to justice. Upon returning to his office, Dong Xian distributed all the money among his subordinates. From then on, Dong Xian continued to crack down on corrupt aristocrats and lawbreakers. His reputation terrified the elite of Luoyang, earning him the nickname the Sleeping Tiger. Another unyielding official, Ji Yun. Dong Xian was not the only strict official in Luoyang. Ji Yun, a low-ranking officer in charge of the city gates, was another fearless enforcer of the law. One day, Emperor Guangwu and his entourage went hunting outside the city. They enjoyed themselves so much that they did not return until after nightfall. By the time they arrived at Shangdong Gate, the city gate had already been locked. The emperor's guards ordered the gatekeeper to open the gates, but Ji Yun refused. Even when Emperor Guangwu himself arrived and gave the order, Ji Yun stood firm. "It is night time. I cannot verify your identity. I cannot open the gate." Faced with this stubborn official, the emperor had no choice but to take a detour to another gate. The next morning, Emperor Guangwu planned to summon Ji Yun for punishment. However, before he could do so, a formal petition from Ji Yun had already arrived. In his letter, Ji Yun boldly criticized the emperor. "Your Majesty spends the entire day hunting, and even stays out until deep into the night. If this continues, who will manage state affairs?" Reading this, Emperor Guangwu was impressed. Instead of punishing Ji Yun, he rewarded him with 100 bolts of cloth. He even demoted the official in charge of the Eastern Central Gate, which had allowed his party to enter. Legacy of just governance. These fearless enforcers of the law, like Dong Xian and Ji Yun, played a crucial role in establishing a stable and just government. Their dedication helped strengthen imperial authority while ensuring that even nobles were held accountable. Through such governance, Emperor Guangwu successfully laid the foundation for the Eastern Han Dynasty, bringing an era of peace, prosperity, and legal order after years of war and chaos. 78. The betrayal that led to Ma Yuan's downfall. Upon reaching 5 streams, Ma Yuan's army struggled to adapt to the humid southern climate, and many soldiers succumbed to heatstroke. Ma Yuan himself fell ill. At this time, a court official named Liang Song, who was also Emperor Guangwu's son-in-law, seized the opportunity to slander Ma Yuan. He accused Ma Yuan of making tactical errors in battle and secretly hoarding treasures from the south. Liang Song held a personal grudge against Ma Yuan. His father had once been a close friend of Ma Yuan, but Ma Yuan had previously criticized Liang Song's arrogance, causing him to harbor resentment. By the time Liang Song arrived at 5 streams, Ma Yuan had already died from illness. However, Liang Song was not satisfied. He falsely claimed that Ma Yuan had stolen a cart full of pearls, and even got General Ma Wu to testify against him. Believing the accusations, Emperor Guangwu stripped Ma Yuan of his noble title and ordered an investigation into his alleged crimes. When Ma Yuan's coffin arrived at his home, his wife, Lady Ma, was too afraid to hold a proper funeral, fearing backlash from the court. She secretly buried her husband outside the city, while former friends and allies dared not pay their respects. Still, Lady Ma refused to let her husband die with his name dishonored. She personally went to plead with Emperor Guangwu, but he angrily threw Liang Song's report at her. When she finally read the accusations, she realized the truth. Ma Yuan had never hoarded treasures. He had only brought back a type of medicinal grain called Jarb's tares, which was believed to cure rheumatism. The so-called pearls were merely these medicinal grains. She petitioned the emperor 6 times to clear Ma Yuan's name, but each time she was ignored. However, one courageous official, Zhu Bo, heard about the injustice and submitted a petition defending Ma Yuan. At last, Emperor Guangwu reconsidered. Realizing his mistake, he allowed Ma Yuan's family to hold a proper burial and stopped the investigation into his crimes. Legacy of a great general. Although Ma Yuan was never enshrined among the 28 generals of Cloud Terrace, his legacy as a fearless and steadfast warrior endured. His famous motto, "The poorer one is, the stronger one must be. The older one gets, the mightier one should become," continues to inspire generations. Today, he is remembered not only for his military prowess but also for his resilience, loyalty, and honor in the face of betrayal.